What's up, everybody? Welcome back to What's Next. I'm joined here with my man, as always, my ride or die, Tyrone. Before we get started, we're going to talk about Thor Love and Thunder today. I got a quick shout out to Mama Bear over there at the
Yes, Mama
Circle Club.
Rose. Yes, sir.
She finally hooked me up with my Corey Circle Club t-shirt. It's official. I'm enshrined. I'm a part of the
Yes.
squad. Just need to put
Yes.
that on the record. But shout out to Mama. How you doing, my man?
Good, man. Good. A lot of good stuff going on with Marvel right now. I got a little gripe going on with Marvel people and the fans. I think people all need to relax a little bit. I think we gotta just take it easy. I think we forget sometimes that some of these movies weren't that great in Phase 1, Phase 2, and that like it's always been a bumpy road, and it's always been about just being patient. And I think this Thor: Love and Thunder movie was a little combination of a lot of frustrations. But off the bat, my first frustration with this was the trailer. I think when we look at this trailer, right, we saw you and I took a look. We saw the Guardians, and we're like, oh shoot, we're getting a Thor and Guardians little movie here potentially. And then we see Natalie Portman back as Jane, and I kind of felt like even honestly her as Jane, I'm like we didn't really get a lot of that. When he saw Sif, Valkyrie, like it just some of these moments that it felt like it'd be a lot bigger weren't as big. And then when you have the gods, okay, so you talk about these gods, that to me was probably the most disappointing and also like the biggest thing. Where I was like, whoa, like Gore, I feel like we didn't really get to see him all that. Gore the God Butcher, and I'm like, they sort of implied that he did these things, but I was like, I would have liked to see if he's the baddest of the baddest. I would have liked to see him actually kill. And we saw before he becomes Gore, he kills that god, but I want to see him as Gore. And the second thing is, I feel when you have Christian Bale, like an A-list actor like this, you can't waste your time with him. You gotta, honestly, you might even want to retain him for a few movies, right? And I think what we could have seen based on that ending where we get Hercules sent, I think this could have kind of kept going, and we could have let Gore get away. Maybe Thor saves the day, but Gore is off and running, and he becomes a problem later. I just definitely thought it was a little premature for us to get rid of him. There was a lot going on in this movie, right? Jane has cancer, and like that's a whole thing, and it kind of took me out because the movie's so silly and jokey, but then it would just 180, like a hard 180 to these like really serious moments. So there was a lot of different emotions I felt coming out of this. What about you?
Yeah, I thought it was like it was a good movie if you're taking it as just its own movie, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
it was enjoyable. Like you said, there was a lot of funny moments. I said in coming into this, it was gonna be a very rom-com esque movie,
Yep.
right? I think for them diving into the rom-com aspect, they really went head first into trying to make it stand on its own in a sense
Mm-hmm.
without really fully making it about the like MCU and
Yeah.
diving deep into things and stuff like that. And I think that's where we kind of fall short on it and where we
Yeah.
think it had, because I see a lot of potential in it, right? And I think you kind of
Mm-hmm.
highlighted a lot of the reasons why we see that potential. Like starting with Gore, right? I like he goes from this like such like innocent individual who's helpless, and yeah, like I can see how I like how he kind of gets the necro sword and that whole
Mm-hmm.
first instance transpires, but I like to see him kind of grow into that role, become more menacing, go
Yeah.
on like a one or two adventures with him, and seeing him kind of murk these gods off, right?
Yep. Yep.
I think it would have brought more substance to the character because I really enjoyed the character. I liked what Christian Bale was doing, to your
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
But to the thing of like it's kind of a standalone film, there was a lot of finality to it, right? Like the problem kind of got solved with Gore by the end, right?
Yep.
There's no really looming threat. They throw in the whole eternity aspect, which
Yep.
is another thing in and of itself that we can talk about later in this video. But
Yeah.
I just felt like a lot of substance was missed, that I felt like could have been there easily with like 15 more minutes of movie. They didn't need like 45 more minutes. But like
No.
Jane too, right? Like those moments where she had cancer didn't really feel like I didn't
It.
really feel that heartfelt moment because it didn't
Yeah.
sink in for me.
Yeah.
Felt
It
like
felt.
it
It
kind of already knew
felt.
what was gonna
It
happen.
felt very quick. Like it felt like just very quick. Like a lot of things were happening. I mean, like even like their relationship. It was just sort of like it was like this like sort of like high school awkwardness to them, and it didn't really feel like okay, these two had missed each other for a long time, and like they finally got past that awkward stage. Like they spent a lot of time together, so it was weird to me that like they were sort of being like, oh hey Jane,
Yeah.
hey Thor. I'm like, like I just think that like that awkwardness like of like seeing an ex per se, like it's there in the beginning, but I don't think it lasts that long when you truly have the history that those two do.
Yeah. So this is my thing with that too. Like the way they portrayed the whole breakup in Endgame, like made it seem like it was really about like Jane and she couldn't do this whole like in and out stuff.
Right.
And when the truth comes forward that it's really just like Thor ran away and like how sad he was, like I felt again it felt just too quick. Like they played it off like, oh, Thor's always done this because like he can't get attached to people because he's Thor. It was like such a throwaway to me. Like I felt like you could have provided way more substance there and a way better like story where they come back together. And like I feel like for Jane, like having him run off, like obviously it's Thor and like you want to be with Thor, but like I felt like she got left so dirty there, right? Like why was she so quick to like accept somebody who did her so wrong like that,
Yeah.
I just didn't think like that was so realistic. And then like they had the whole aspect of her being like bro Jane when she was Thor.
Yeah.
It just seemed weird. It just seemed way too fratty. And that's why I say like if you take it for just like a rom-com movie standalone, like it was enjoyable, but like when you take all the context of what we know, like it just felt sloppy in a sense.
That's a great word to use, is sloppy. Like because to me when I look at Thor, Hulk, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, like these are movies that you can't play around with. Like these are like the movies that you use to move forward the progression of the MCU. And this sort of kind of felt like a throwaway movie. Like honestly, I would say that if you didn't see this movie, you went to the next phase, whatever, and this is all hindsight, we don't really know, but I would imagine that you don't need to actually see this movie to sort of like know, okay, Thor has grown, he's changed, he's got a daughter now, that's it, and I think because it sort of almost seems as like even the thing with Hercules, like Hercules, they beat him down, he takes the lightning bolt, moves on. Like even that really was kind of a weird thing too. It's like they take the lightning bolt and go, like no one's gonna chase them, no one's gonna go after them. Like Hercules just kind of got whooped, and then at the end, Hercules wants to have revenge, and so he's got his son. I mean, sorry, not Hercules, excuse me, Zeus. Wants to have revenge with his son Hercules, and it just kind of felt like, how do we even get here? Like, how did it take this long for him to kind of come to that conclusion? And I know that they want to go forward to have sort of this like civil war of like Thor versus the gods, or the Avengers and superheroes versus the gods, which could be cool. But there was a lot of different things going on in this movie.
Yeah, and I think to that point where like, I love the idea of like getting the gods involved, right? Like I think first thing I said to you is like, I think this is a great play for Moon Knight, right? Like because you could get Moon Knight on your side as Thor. He's kind of like one of those representations of the gods. You even said to me about how like there's a bunch of gods trapped. So did they get done dirty by the other gods? Like did they end up coming on the side of Thor and Moon Knight? Like that whole angle and avenue sounds amazing, right? But how they tee it up is like these gods have been basically playing it up like we don't care about these humans, right? Like we don't get involved with them, right? And then like you got a god butcher coming around, they're still kind of ignoring the situation. And then when one of the gods is kind of stepping up being like, nah, we got to take this serious, you're not taking it serious, and now you felt like you're being made a joke about, like okay, now you feel that way? You haven't felt that way this entire time? Like it feels like too quick. Way too quick.
And I get it, because it's like, they're all they care about is their own image and themselves. And I think, Zeus got his feelings hurt, like and so now he's petty and he wants to kind of get back. But like even that just feels like, what is this, like a CW movie or something? It just doesn't feel like very
Yeah.
like Marvel and Zeus, and also the way that they portray the gods, like to make them sort of like careless. I don't care, and they don't like. I'm not gonna do anything. I didn't really
Mm.
get that in the beginning, honestly. Like so Gore and these people are praying to the gods. Like, oh, we just move on to the next person. And it's like, why would they pray to this god that doesn't answer them, that doesn't help them? You know, like I kind of
Mm.
feel like that relationship didn't like kind of make much sense to me. And also
Yeah.
didn't feel. I get that they're selfish, but I didn't get why so much so that they were selfish and why they kind of turned to this because and
Mm.
I think it was almost implied as if, hey, we used to be the Avengers for Earth. Now no one cares about us. But it's also like,
Yeah.
well, that's on you, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's like something that threw me off too. Like, what's their real purpose, right? Like, taking a completely different movie, like Clash of the
Mm-hmm.
Titans, right? Like, the gods got praised, right? Or like even Hades, like the fear grew and he grew stronger. Like, how does their power ultimately work, right? Like the way
Yeah.
you describe it, it seems like how it actually is. They were really just assigned to these different worlds. They had a
Mm-hmm.
specific power. They're supposed to look over shit, and once they kind of had that praise, they've kind of sat back and didn't care, right? Like
Yeah.
Zeus to this point really has lived off of his affirmation from all the other gods, right? So
Yeah.
like what is their real purpose? What is it within the MCU, right?
It
Like
just felt
how
like a
do they
big
even
frat
a
house,
joke?
dude.
That's
Yeah,
yeah, it just
yeah,
felt like
yeah.
a joke, right? And like
Yeah.
if that's the way they're gonna be, okay, and like you're gonna have them as these villains, but like
Yeah.
I just feel like when you're talking about gods, there needs to
Yeah.
be a seriousness to it. And when you think
Yeah.
about, again, I'm gonna take one of your properties that you're using, Moonlight, and the seriousness behind it, or like think about Khonshu and the seriousness Khonshu had against
Y-
Amit and what Amit was gonna do to this world, right?
You
And then
know,
those gods are kind of playing it off like, we don't really get meddled with these things. But then once Amit's really out, they're like, oh man, like we got to do something, right? Like I feel like these gods are way too passive, and maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what they're trying to put forward, is that these gods have been passive. They're not doing their roles, right? And people like Moon Knight and Thor are putting them in their place to get back on the right side, and that might be that switch for Hercules, where we
so
say he starts as a villain but ends as an anti-hero.
I
This might be that awakening for them.
I think that this is, I just looked this up, and this could just be me kind of grasping at straws. But so when I look at the ancient Egyptian timeline, that's 4300 BC. And then when you look at the ancient Greece timeline, that's 1200 to 300 BC. So it honestly could just be that the gods are just immature. They're young, right? In comparison to the Egyptian gods. Maybe the Egyptian gods have seen more. They've like, they fought with the Eternals. They understand how the gravitas and the seriousness. Whereas maybe in ancient Greece times, there were less people. There was less to kind of worry about. So maybe they kind of didn't have as much of a task to worry about. But I don't really know. I mean, but that's my best kind of answer
You
to
want me
give
to
you.
grasp at straws even more here?
Go ahead.
Because then we can say it. We can bring this video back up 4 years from now when they
Let's
make
see
this
it.
next Thor movie. Maybe based on those time frames, the
Yeah.
Greek gods are the ones that put those Egyptian gods into those vases.
Okay, I like that little theory you got there. I like that theory.
That is the darkest of darkest opinion, bold predictions you could ever get.
I mean,
We'll grasp at straws, and I'll come back and forth.
Look. I mean, they have to have a reason to be the villains and the bad guy, and I think to your point, we're gonna have to see Moon Knight jump into this and help out a little bit. But before we wrap this up, man, I'm curious to know your thoughts. So, I mean, the big takeaway from this, right, is that Thor now is. There's no more Jane, so he doesn't have that on the back of his mind, his shoulder. He's kind of accepted. She's gone. She's no longer here. We see Valkyrie's back doing her thing. Gore's dead. And then, these two kind of could finally end the chapter where it needed to end. And so now we got this adorable young little girl working with Thor here. And is actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter. Do you think that we're gonna get some more between those two, like movies between those two? That's a very bold thing, is like, to have this father-daughter type movie. I don't think we've gotten a lot of that, so that could be interesting. Or do you think that it'll be one of those things where it's like, oh, you stay here, love, and I go out? Because her name's Love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this is what is interesting about it, right? I think injecting from the business side, injecting Chris Hemsworth's daughter into the movie and
Yes.
maybe getting her as a star definitely
Lock.
helps keep daddy around,
Lock.
right?
It's a
So
lock.
lock in Chris Hemsworth for
Yeah.
5 more movies over
Yeah.
here. You heard it here
Definitely.
first. Okay. I think more importantly, you got to understand how his daughter came to be, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we really are fixated on the fact that it's Gore's daughter, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Gore's daughter died, right? The way Gore's daughter really came back to life was through a higher cosmic entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
In eternity. And if we go to the comics, right? Eternity really bestows powers in an ability to someone called love, right?
Mm.
So having her injected in here, I don't think it's just some throwaway. I think
No.
it's going to be a very, very important piece to some larger story down the line. And I
Mm-hmm.
think when you end a movie with something like that, especially with Thor and kind of wrapping up his depression stage
Yeah.
and this kind of tough time in his life
Yep.
to now move forward and progress forward,
Mm-hmm.
that piece that he's bringing with him has to play a huge piece, right? And I think it's not a coincidence that in this movie they're starting to dabble and really get into live action the
Mm-hmm.
higher entities like eternity, right? We saw the celestial there, the watcher there in the stone, right? So they're building on more of these cosmic entities, which is important towards the multiverse and how the multiverse works, right? So
Mm.
I don't know the extent of what his daughter is gonna mean or do moving
Yeah.
forward, but I think she's gonna be extremely involved or be some like trump card at the end of the day that helps them get out of some situation, because
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
they need some love
I
in some
think.
tough times.
Yeah. I also think too. Like I think we're gonna get this three trilogy thing with Thor because Chris Hemsworth loves playing the character. It always and I think the thing, going back to the gods too, is I think Marvel's approach to the gods is they don't want to take them very seriously. They kind of want them to be rambunctious and crazy and silly and jokey, which is why Thor, his movies and even Loki, they like to joke a lot. Like to have a good time, and I think that we should definitely see that going forward with the rest of his movies. And it's like you said, like he's been through so much that they even like parody it, right? With these actors. I love when they have Matt Damon on there, Melissa McCarthy. As Hella was really funny, and that's the thing too. These movies are very funny. They have good funny moments. So that's why I don't think it's a bad movie by any extent. I just think the expectations of having a pivotal Avengers member, you always want it to move, and it does. I think it was a little messy to get there, but now where we are, we have a mature Thor who's ready to tackle things. I think we're gonna get a lot more love, and the fact that it's actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter is just huge, because I think that means we're definitely going to get at least 2 more movies, and that will become this trilogy. And I could see a sunset trilogy for him down the line, 3 more movies, where he's passing it on to his daughter, really, or
Yeah,
someone else.
I think something to note out of what you're saying, right, is the importance of trying to keep a pivotal character like Thor around. Like we've always said, like when it comes to Thor, he's the most realistic Avenger to last a long time on the team, right? He's Thor.
Mm-hmm.
He legitimately just lives that long, right?
Yes, yeah.
And right now that OG squad is dwindling, right? Iron Man is gone, Cap is gone, Black
Mm-hmm.
Widow is gone, Hawkeye's right out the door, Hulk, if he's not at full force, is right out the door, right?
Yep,
Like he
yep.
might be around, but like he's not providing that punch like he used to. So you're
Mm-hmm.
really just left with Thor. And then we talk about it over on the What's Next channel all the time, especially in our Miss Marvel season finale video.
Go check that out.
Is about the second phase of big tier characters like Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Captain
Mm-hmm.
Marvel. And we talk about the importance of Captain Marvel moving forward, seeing as how the unfortunate death of Chadwick Boseman happened, and it really limits the Black Panther character right now, at least until we watch Black Panther 2, which check out the Circle Club because we got a video for the Black Panther as well.
Yep.
But that being said, you really need to keep him involved, and when you keep him involved, it's by making the actor happy, right? And when you make a movie like this, like we said, it's a good movie, but it's an enjoyable movie. And when you really just listen to the interviews from Christian Bale, Natalie Portman, Chris Hemsworth, they had a ton of fun on this movie, and them especially talking about how they were able to bring their kids on set, have a good time. They really enjoyed it. And I heard, not to get into rumors again, but I heard in an interview with my own ears, and I'll try to link it to the What's Next channel on TikTok, but Christian Bale slipped up a little bit.
Talked
about how he might, and he alluded to Gore not being that gone in the MCU.
And I think it makes sense. It makes sense.
And I think it would make sense, but also you only get that when you keep these actors happy, right? So maybe I think to your point, down the line, this movie might play a way bigger importance than we even realize. Right now, it's feeling a lot like a throwaway film, a fun film, definitely one you can laugh, enjoy. If you're that deep MCU nerd that's looking to see where the yards, if the first down markers got moved, right now, looks like we are on 2nd and 10. So,
maybe 2nd and 9, if anything. But yeah, no, and I think the thing about when it's, because that's another reason you should subscribe to the Circle Club and What's Next, is we like to think about the business behind these movies, right? And when you talk about the business, inviting the kids and all that stuff and allowing them to be in there, first off, it's cheap. It's not really hard to act because you're acting with your parent. Like, you do that as a kid anyways, right? All the time, where you're like playing in roles.
Kids are just like naturally very out, like,
with their parent. With their parent, it's always gonna be easier. It's cheaper. But then you also think about Christian Bale and Portman and just these actors, even Leo, right? It's like growing up, they were like A-listers, top, but now they're getting older. They're starting to transition into that parent life. They're starting to transition to caring about things differently. Life's not as serious. I don't need to do all these Oscar movies. So then you're going to start to invite their friends into it. And other people are like, no, man, we have a great time on set. It's a lot of times, it's funny, I saw Tom Holland talking about this. He said, I've been on plenty of indie sets, right? And honestly, that's what Marvel is. He's like, I've been on big movie production sets, and it's like you have way less freedom, way less wiggle room because everything's so calculated and tested. But Marvel likes to play with the actors a bit, so it's like a big budget indie film for these people. So I think they enjoy it a lot more than people realize.
And that's it, like you said, we think about the business side of these things, and when you think about really, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the actors that they're getting in these movies. You got Oscar winners, you got like A-list, S-list celebrities, right? All we're missing, and we said it, is my man Tom Cruise. He needs to slide through. My man Leo, he needs to slide through. We're waiting on you guys. But when they bring these guys in, like Christian Bale, you got Samuel Jackson just talking about
begging to get back.
Nick Fury, Nick Fury, maybe Mace Windu, which that's a whole different discussion. But when you are making fun movies like this, you're gonna just continue to get the right people involved, and we all know how this world works. You get the talent, and everything else works itself out. So even in a movie like this, where we felt like it wasn't hitting its full potential, we still enjoy it because you got heavy hitters like Christian Bale putting on a performance.
And honestly, it's a copycat league, right? Everything is a copycat league. So you see Harry Styles has joined in, right? Do not be surprised if you start to see other artists, other musicians, rappers even, start to try to get into the Marvel cinematic. Because the Marvel, this is the best ticket on earth because you get to have fun, but you get, the merch. You get to be remembered by this thing forever. Like Bill Burr. Bill Burr is not a Star Wars guy at all, but he got to be in Star Wars, and he was like, honestly, people come up to me all the time for this specific role. It's a game changer. It really is.
Yeah. And I think what's happened a lot of times is example, Christian Bale, right? Somebody who would never go, he's talked about never wanted to be in a superhero movie again, wanted no involvement. And when he got approached by Marvel, he was kind of hesitant at first, and his kids were like, Dad, we will never forgive you. You need to do it.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
it's starting to transition though from like these kids telling the parent like, yo, you have to be in this, to like the actors just themselves. Like when Marvel calls, you hear it in all these interviews now. When Marvel calls, you answer.
Yeah.
And you are begging to get in there, and you take what you get, because and that's where like guys like Keanu Reeves, where I know Marvel is in active talks just trying to shop any type of role for something like that. It's like, we can do that with Leo, Tom, anybody. Just keep getting these guys involved.
Give me Keanu Reeves and I'm locked. I don't care what the movie is.
Hey, I swear to God, if Keanu Reeves shows up as Wolverine one of these days,
bro. I mean, even if it was an older Wolverine, man, I mean, I will lose it. I will literally lose it. And I think, like you said, I think that's where we are right now in the state of Marvel, is like, you know, we have all these people who are ready to play, get new ideas. The fans want new ideas, and because you get new ideas, you're going to do that. I was watching a roundtable with a lot of these on the Hollywood Reporter on Vanity. They were talking about, like, you know, being in superhero movies and what's the difference and all that. And Samuel Jackson and Oscar Isaac was sitting there. They were like, honestly, I had a freaking blast. Like, I never thought I would do that. And Oscar was basically, you know, talking about how he's never going to go back to Star Wars. And then you just look at the contrast. It's like, because it's how they allow people to be a part of the process.
It's in the same lot, too. Same lot. Same Disney lot.
Yeah. But it's about how those two different companies approach their characters and let them be evolved. And like the thing is, like, and that's why, not to get too off topic, make sure you check out What's Next with Miss Marvel. That's why I love Iman Vellani so much as Miss Marvel, because she is a super fan in Marvel. And I'm like, you have to be really, like, to me, you can't just enter the Marvel Cinematic Universe and think, oh, because I'm an A-lister, I'm gonna nail it, everyone's gonna love me. Like, honestly, like, if you're not diving into the character, not diving into the lore, it will show. And I think that, you know, this movie sort of had a little bit of that stitch. If I was a betting man, I would say that Portman and Bale did not do like heavy duty Marvel research and all that stuff. They were playing a role, and they were good. But, like, there's a difference. You know, there's levels to this. And, like, honestly, I think Iman Vellani's performance was better than both of those people. So.
And it's hard for me to knock on poor Natalie and Christian there, because, again, like we said in the beginning of this video, we felt like they deserved more screen time.
Yes, definitely.
So, when
not a knock. Yeah.
When Iman got 6 hours and those two are only getting minutes.
Flex, right.
Flexibility is tough.
Exactly. But all right, man, that's what I got for Thor Love and Thunder. If you're still watching, thank you. Make sure you guys subscribe to What's Next. What's Next is where it is happening, where it's popping. Check out my channel where we talk about Black Panther, these new leaks that just came out. We talk about some Ms. Marvel theories and all that. Corey, let them know where they can find What's Next and sign us out.
Yeah, What's Next? You can find us on all social platforms. Make sure you follow us there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as we always say, if you do, you'll always stay tuned with What's Next.